In her modest Chicago apartment, a mid-level financial analyst was about to uncover the conspiracy of her lifetime. What started as a routine quarterly review meeting took a shocking turn when she came face-to-face with her own planned murder. Emma Harper wasn't your typical corporate employee. For 3 years, she had spent her life methodically auditing financial records at Blackstone Associates, known for her relentless attention to detail and unwavering moral compass. When she accidentally recorded her colleagues casually discussing her accident, she had no idea she was walking into a deadly game where $80 million in stolen retirement funds was worth killing for. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Emma Harper adjusted her laptop screen for the 3rd time. The late afternoon sunlight streaming through her Lincoln Park apartment's single window, casting an unwelcome glare across her monitor. The Chicago skyline beyond her fire escape seemed particularly gray today, matching her mood as she prepared for another quarterly review meeting. The kind of corporate ritual that made her question whether her Northwestern finance degree had been worth the student loans that still haunted her monthly budget. Her father would have called these meetings corporate theater, back when he still had his small accounting firm, before the fraud that destroyed everything he'd built. The memory of watching him pack up his office, boxes full of 20-year client relationships reduced to cardboard containers, still made her chest tighten. It was why she'd joined Blackstone Associates 3 years ago, to prevent the kind of financial crimes that had crushed her family. "Emma, can you hear us?" Robert Blackwood's voice crackled through her laptop speakers, warm and paternal as always. Her senior vice president had been her champion since day one, the closest thing to a mentor she'd found in the corporate maze of downtown Chicago. "Yes, I'm here," she replied, noting the familiar faces in their little Zoom squares. Ashley Williams waved from her own home office, probably juggling her son's remote learning schedule again. The IT department was represented by Jake Morrison, whose camera was off as usual. She'd worked with him on several security audits but barely knew him beyond his reputation for being thorough and quietly competent. The meeting started predictably. Quarterly numbers, client acquisitions, the usual corporate metrics that felt increasingly hollow as Emma dove deeper into her audit work. But 20 minutes in, her internet connection flickered, a frustration that had plagued her aging apartment building's Wi-Fi for months. "Sorry, everyone. I think I'm having connection issues," she announced, watching her screen freeze on Blackwood's mid-sentence expression. The Zoom app crashed completely, forcing her to restart it. She clicked the meeting link again, entering her password with practiced efficiency. The familiar "waiting for host to let you in" message appeared, but something felt different. Her camera icon showed active, but her microphone displayed as muted, though she distinctly remembered having it unmuted moments before. Technical glitches weren't uncommon, so she waited, assuming someone would notice her in the waiting room and readmit her. But as seconds stretched into a minute, she heard voices coming through her speakers. Clear voices. Active conversation. "Wayne, the Harper problem needs to be resolved quickly." Blackwood's voice, but different somehow. Colder. Clinical. Emma's blood chilled. She stared at her screen, realizing with growing horror that she wasn't in a waiting room at all. She was still in the meeting, but somehow her microphone was muted, while her camera and audio were still recording. They couldn't hear her, but she could hear everything. "How quickly are we talking?" Another voice, David Chen from Legal, a man who'd always seemed nervous around her audit questions. "Days, not weeks," Blackwood replied with the same tone he used to discuss quarterly projections. "She's gotten too close to the Meridian accounts. Last week's audit request was specifically targeting the shell company transfers." Emma's hands trembled as she reached for her trackpad, desperate to record what she was hearing, but terrified of making any sound that might reveal her presence. She managed to start a screen recording, her analytical mind kicking into high gear despite the terror flooding her system. "What about the Hartford precedent?" Ashley's voice. Ashley Williams, her friend, her lunch companion, the colleague, who'd helped her navigate office politics and celebrated her promotion 6 months ago. Hartford worked beautifully, Blackwood said with what sounded like satisfaction. Tragic accident. Very believable. The foundation was properly damaged beforehand. Structural. Failure is always more convincing than something obvious. Emma's breath caught in her throat. David Hartford had been a senior analyst who'd died in a scaffolding collapse outside his apartment building 8 months ago. She'd attended his funeral, had brought flowers to his widow. And Jenkins? Chen's voice carried a note of uncertainty. Vehicle malfunction. Brake line deterioration is remarkably difficult to detect post-accident, especially after fire damage. Blackwood paused, and Emma could hear the soft click of what might have been a pen against a desk. Both were getting too close to the full scope of the operation. Harper's audit trail is even more direct. She's identified discrepancies that could unravel the entire $50 million structure. $50 million. Emma's mind raced. Through months of audit work, the patterns she'd noticed in client accounts, the offshore transfers that had seemed unusual but not necessarily illegal, her methodical approach to financial analysis had trained her to notice anomalies, but she'd never imagined they pointed to something this massive. The timeline is critical, Blackwood continued. She's scheduled to present her findings to the EI's external auditors next week. We cannot allow that presentation to happen. What about the security footage? IT records? Ashley's question sent another wave of nausea through Emma. Morrison has been helpful in managing digital footprints, Blackwood replied. He's proven quite reliable in ensuring certain files don't appear in routine backups. Jake Morrison, the quiet IT manager she'd worked with, trusted with sensitive audit data, another ally revealed as an enemy. How do we proceed? Chen asked. I've already made contact with our external consultant, Blackwood said, the same one who handled Hartford and Jenkins. Emma Harper will suffer an unfortunate accident within the next 72 hours. Her personal financial struggles make a desperate narrative quite believable, perhaps a tragic response to mounting student debt and career pressures. Emma's vision blurred as the implications crashed over her. They weren't just planning to fire her or discredit her work. They were planning to kill her. Her colleagues, people she'd shared coffee with, worked late nights alongside, considered friends, were casually discussing her murder as if it were a line item in a budget proposal. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory from years of careful documentation taking over. She saved the recording to her desktop, then immediately copied it to her external drive, her cloud storage, and her personal email. 3 years of methodical work habits might just save her life. The conversation continued, but Emma's mind had shifted into survival mode. Every analytical skill she'd developed, every detail-oriented instinct that made her good at her job, now focused on a single question. How long did she have? Meeting adjourned, Blackwood announced, his voice returning to its usual warm tone. Emma, I hope your technical difficulties resolve soon. Perhaps we can schedule a follow-up call tomorrow to discuss your audit progress. The irony wasn't lost on her. He was planning her death while maintaining the facade of mentorship. As the Zoom call ended, Emma sat in her suddenly too quiet apartment, her heart hammering against her ribs. Outside her window, Chicago continued its indifferent evening rhythm. Traffic flowing along Lakeshore Drive, commuters heading home to families who would see them at dinner, people whose biggest concern might be weekend plans or grocery shopping. But Emma Harper, who had stumbled into a recording that revealed her own planned murder, faced a choice that would determine whether she lived to see another sunset. She could run, pack everything and disappear into the sprawling anonymity of America, or she could fight back using the only weapon she had, the truth, captured accidentally by the same technology that had revealed the conspiracy in the first place. The recording sat on her desktop, a digital time bomb that could either destroy her enemies or ensure her own death. The next decision she made would determine which. The recording sat on her desktop, a digital time bomb that could either destroy her enemies or ensure her own death. The next decision she made would determine which. Emma stared at the file icon for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, her mind racing through possibilities and probabilities like the financial models she built at work. Running would be the smart choice. Pack a bag, drain her savings account, and disappear into the American heartland where corporate assassins couldn't find a small-town waitress or grocery clerk. But even as the thought formed, Emma knew she couldn't abandon the fight. Her father's destroyed business, David Hartford's widow, the unnamed Jenkins who died in a brake malfunction. They deserved justice, not another victim joining their ranks. She opened her laptop's task manager and disabled every non-essential program, maximizing her processing power. If she was going to wage digital warfare against a $50 million conspiracy, she needed every advantage her modest setup could provide. First, the evidence. Emma created multiple copies of the recording, uploading them to 7 different cloud services using email accounts she'd established over the years. Her personal Gmail, an old Yahoo account from college, even a Proton Mail account she'd created during a cybersecurity workshop. Each copy was encrypted and stored under innocuous file names: Mom's Birthday 2024, Chicago Marathon Training, Recipe Collection. Her methodical nature, which had made her an exceptional auditor, now became her survival toolkit. She created a detailed spreadsheet tracking every piece of evidence, every backup location, every potential vulnerability in her digital fortress. If they killed her tonight, at least the truth would survive. But they'd mentioned external auditors. Emma pulled up her work calendar, confirming what her memory already knew. She was scheduled to present her Meridian account findings to Pemberton and Associates next Thursday, 6 days away. In her presentation folder, she found months of meticulous documentation, unusual offshore transfers, shell company connections, and patterns that had seemed merely suspicious until tonight's revelation. The audit trail told a story of sophisticated financial engineering, money flowing from client accounts through a maze of subsidiary companies, each transaction small enough to avoid automatic flagging, but collectively representing a massive theft. Emma had built career analyzing complex financial structures, but this scheme displayed a level of sophistication that spoke to years of careful planning. She researched David Hartford first, pulling up news articles about his death. Structural engineer dies in scaffolding collapse, read the Tribune headline from 8 months ago. The article mentioned an ongoing investigation into building code violations, but Emma now saw the sinister efficiency of the murder. Hartford had been a structural engineer before joining Blackstone. He would have recognized signs of deliberate sabotage, making the scaffolding method particularly cruel. Jenkins proved harder to research until she remembered his first name. From company directories. Marcus Jenkins, senior analyst, had died in a single car accident on the Eisenhower Expressway 4 months ago. Brake failure suspected in fatal crash, according to the Sun-Times. The article mentioned evidence of brake line deterioration, but investigators had attributed it to poor maintenance rather than sabotage. 2 murders disguised as accidents, and now they wanted to make her the third. Emma's analytical mind cataloged the patterns even as her emotional core reeled from the implications. They were professionals at this, which meant her amateur efforts might not be enough. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Hope your internet is working better. Missed you in the meeting today. Coffee tomorrow?" The casual friendliness felt like acid in her stomach. How long had Ashley been feeding information to Blackwood? How many of their conversations had been intelligence gathering disguised as friendship? Emma forced herself to respond normally. "Internet is terrible in this building. Coffee sounds great. Usual place at 9? She needed to maintain her routine, appear normal while building her case. Suspicion would accelerate their timeline. She opened her company email, maintaining the illusion of normal work patterns, routine responses to client queries, scheduling confirmations, the digital footprints of an employee focused on her job, rather than uncovering corporate murder. But between the mundane emails, she carefully documented every interaction she'd had with Blackwood, Ashley, and the others over the past months, looking for signs she'd missed. The patterns were there once she knew what to look for: Blackwood's increased interest in her audit timelines, Ashley's casual questions about her research methods. Even Jake Morrison's helpful efficiency in providing server access began to look sinister. Had he been monitoring her digital activity all along? Her laptop chimed with an email notification. Jake Morrison, sent just minutes ago. Noticed some unusual server activity during today's meeting. Zoom backup systems flagged a recording anomaly. Might want to check your connection settings. Happy to help troubleshoot if needed. Emma's blood turned to ice water, the server backup. Of course, Blackstone would automatically back up video calls. Corporate liability required it. But if Jake could see the recording anomaly, could he also see what she'd recorded? Was this message a threat disguised as technical support? She stared at the email, analyzing every word like a forensic linguist. Unusual server activity could mean he'd detected her screen recording. Zoom backup systems flagged might indicate the system had captured her accidental recording session. But happy to help troubleshoot felt almost genuine, as if he was offering actual assistance rather than delivering a warning. Emma made a decision that went against every survival instinct screaming in her head. She replied, "Thanks for letting me know. I did have some connection issues. Could we discuss the backup system tomorrow? I want to make sure I understand how it works." If Jake Morrison was part of the conspiracy, her message would confirm their worst fears. But if he wasn't, if Blackwood had lied about his cooperation, she might have found her first potential ally. Either way, she'd know by tomorrow whether her digital fortress was strong enough to protect her, or if she'd just painted a target on her back for the professional killer they'd hired to eliminate her. Outside her window, Chicago's evening lights twinkled with deceptive peace, unaware that somewhere in the city, a murderer was preparing to make her the third victim of a conspiracy that had turned corporate greed into a killing machine. Outside her window, Chicago's evening lights twinkled with deceptive peace, unaware that somewhere in the city, a murderer was preparing to make her the third victim of a conspiracy that had turned corporate greed into a killing machine. Emma had barely slept, every creak of her old building making her wonder if they'd decided to accelerate their timeline. The morning commute to Blackstone Associates felt like walking into a trap. Every face on the red line could be watching her, every fellow passenger a potential threat. But maintaining her routine was crucial. Any deviation might signal that she knew something was wrong. The Blackstone building's glass facade reflected the October morning sun as Emma badged into the lobby, forcing herself to smile at the security guard who'd greeted her every workday for 3 years. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt interminable, her heart hammering against her ribs as she prepared to face people who had casually discussed her murder less than 18 hours ago. "Emma, there you are." Ashley Williams materialized, beside her cubicle with 2 coffee cups and her usual bright smile. "Thought you might need caffeine after yesterday's technical difficulties." The friendly gesture felt like poison. Emma accepted the coffee with steady hands, though every instinct screamed not to drink anything Ashley had touched. "Thanks. My internet at home is becoming a real problem. I might need to work late here tonight to catch up on what I missed." "Oh, you know what? Robert mentioned you might want to discuss some audit questions with him today. He's really impressed with your work on the Meridian accounts." Ashley's tone remained perfectly casual, but Emma now heard the intelligence gathering beneath the friendliness. "That's great. I've been looking forward to his feedback." Emma sipped the coffee, watching Ashley's face for any reaction. If they were planning to poison her, Ashley showed no signs of concern. Actually, I was thinking of checking in with IT first. I want to make sure yesterday's connection issues don't happen again. Smart thinking. Jake Morrison's really helpful with that stuff. Ashley's response seemed genuine, but Emma no longer trusted her ability to read people she'd thought she knew. After Ashley left, Emma made her way to the IT department, her steps measured and purposeful despite the anxiety coursing through her veins. The server room's humming provided white noise as she approached Jake's cubicle, noting his military straight posture and the methodical organization of his workspace. Jake, thanks for that email yesterday. Do you have a few minutes to discuss the backup system? Jake Morrison looked up from his monitors, his dark eyes studying her face with unexpected intensity. He was younger than she'd realized, probably early 30s, with the kind of quiet competence she associated with people who'd seen serious situations. Sure. Let's grab conference room C. It's soundproof for sensitive IT discussions. His choice of words made Emma wonder if he suspected their conversation might need privacy. The small conference room felt secure, its thick walls muffling the office. Noise. Jake closed the door and activated a white noise generator, definitely not standard procedure for routine IT support. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust me. His voice carried a gravity that made her decision to contact him feel either very smart or very dangerous. Yesterday's server activity wasn't random. Someone accessed your Zoom session data from outside the normal channels. Emma's pulse quickened. What kind of access? The kind that suggests someone wanted to know what you recorded during that meeting. Jake's eyes held hers steadily. I've been monitoring unusual data patterns for months. Someone's been systematically accessing employee communications, specifically around financial audits. The revelation hit like cold water. You're not part of it. Part of what? But his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. Emma made the calculation that might save her life or end it. Jake, if I tell you something that could get us both killed, can I trust you to help me? His military background showed in his immediate response. I took an oath to protect people from enemies, foreign and domestic. That didn't end when I left the service. She told him everything. The accidental recording, the murder plot, the previous victims, the $50 million embezzlement scheme. Jake listened without interruption, his expression growing darker as the scope of the conspiracy became clear. Jesus Christ. Jake ran a hand through his hair. I knew something was wrong with the data patterns, but murder. He paused, then looked directly at her. Do you still have the recording? Multiple copies, multiple locations. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Smart. We need to get the server back up before they realize what happened. If Blackwood thinks you overheard something, they'll wipe everything. Jake's tactical mind was already working. But first, we need to confirm who we can trust. I don't think we can trust anyone here. Maybe not, but we need to know who's actively working against us versus who's just unaware. Jake pulled out his phone. I'm going to run a data audit on communications between Blackwood's office and external contractors. If they hired a professional killer, there's probably a digital trail. While Jake worked, Emma maintained her normal routine, responding to emails and updating her audit files. But every interaction felt loaded with hidden meaning. When Robert Blackwood stopped by her cubicle to check on her progress, his paternal smile seemed to mask calculation. Emma, I understand you had some technical difficulties yesterday. I hope that won't delay your Meridian presentation. Not at all. I'm actually ahead of schedule. The lie came easily, though her hands trembled slightly as she organized her papers. I should have everything ready for the external auditors by Thursday. Excellent. Your thoroughness is exactly what makes you such a valuable member of our team. Blackwood's praise felt like a threat wrapped in corporate speak. After he left, Emma received a text from Jake. Found it. External contractor hired 3 days ago. Same company used for Hartford and Jenkins. We need to move now. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. They weren't just planning her murder, they'd already hired the killer. Emma stared at her computer screen, the familiar audit spreadsheets blurring as she realized that her normal workday might be her last. Jake appeared at her cubicle, his expression carefully neutral. Emma, could you help me with a server backup issue? We might need to work late tonight to resolve it. She understood the code. Tonight, they would either gather enough evidence to expose the conspiracy, or they would become its next victims. She understood the code. Tonight, they would either gather enough evidence to expose the conspiracy, or they would become its next victims. But as Emma prepared to follow Jake to what might be their final attempt at gathering evidence, the elevator doors opened on the 15th floor, and everything changed. 2 people stepped out, their bearing immediately distinguishing them from the typical corporate visitors who frequented Blackstone Associates. The woman was Asian American, probably mid-30s, with sharp eyes that swept the office like a scanner. The man beside her, tall and broad-shouldered with graying temples, moved with the controlled confidence of someone accustomed to authority. Both wore the kind of understated but expensive suits that suggested federal law enforcement. "Federal agents," Jake murmured, appearing at Emma's side with practiced casualness. "Someone called this in." Emma's heart hammered as she watched. The reception desk interaction. The woman flashed credentials while the man surveyed the office space, his gaze lingering on employee reactions. Several executives had emerged from their offices, including Robert Blackwood, whose usual composed demeanor showed the first cracks she'd ever witnessed. "Agents Cooper and Stone, FBI," the man announced to the assembled staff. "We're here regarding reports of financial irregularities. We'll need to speak with members of your audit department and review certain company records." "Agent Cooper." Emma filed the name away, studying his face for signs of trustworthiness. His eyes held a steady intelligence that reminded her of her father, someone who dealt in facts rather than corporate manipulation. When his gaze briefly met hers across the office space, she felt an unexpected sense of recognition, as if he understood that someone in this room was afraid for reasons beyond normal investigative anxiety. "Of course, agents. We're always happy to cooperate with federal investigations." Blackwood's recovery was remarkable, his voice returning to its familiar warmth. "Though I must say, any reports of irregularities are likely based on misunderstandings. Our audit processes are quite thorough." Agent Stone, the woman, tilted her head slightly. "We'll determine that for ourselves, Mr. Blackwood. We'd like to start by speaking with your audit staff individually." Emma felt Jake's subtle touch on her arm, a warning to remain calm. Around the office, she could see the conspiracy members, trying to gauge the situation. Ashley Williams had gone pale, her usual confident demeanor replaced by barely concealed panic. David Chen from Legal was whispering urgently into his phone, probably warning someone about the federal presence. "Emma Harper?" Agent Stone consulted a tablet. "You're listed as the senior analyst on the Meridian accounts. Could we speak with you first?" The request felt like salvation and trap combined. Emma nodded, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Of course. Should we use conference room A?" As they walked toward the conference room, Emma caught Blackwood's expression, a flash of calculation that confirmed her worst fears. The FBI's arrival hadn't been random. Someone had tipped them off. But whether that someone was trying to help her or eliminate her remained terrifyingly unclear. Conference Room A's glass walls offered no privacy from curious eyes, but Agent Cooper closed the door and activated a small device that Emma recognized as a signal jammer. The FBI was taking this seriously. "Ms. Harper, we received an anonymous tip regarding financial irregularities in your recent audit work," Agent Stone began, her tone professionally neutral. "Are you aware of any unusual patterns in the accounts you've been reviewing?" Emma faced the moment of truth. These agents could be legitimate federal investigators here to help, or they could be part of the conspiracy, testing whether she'd discovered the embezzlement scheme. Her analytical mind weighed the probabilities while her survival instincts screamed conflicting advice. "I've noticed some unusual offshore transfers," she said carefully, "but nothing I've been able to definitively classify as irregular." Agent Cooper leaned forward slightly. "What about communications among staff regarding these transfers? Any conversations that seemed inappropriate?" The question's specificity made Emma wonder if they already knew about the recording. Her decision crystallized. If the FBI was legitimate, they were her only chance at survival. If they weren't, she was dead anyway. "Agents, I need to tell you something that might sound impossible, but I have proof." Emma's voice gained strength as she committed to the revelation. "Yesterday, I accidentally recorded a conversation where my colleagues discussed planning my murder to cover up a $50 million embezzlement scheme." The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Agent Stone's expression remained neutral, but Agent Cooper's eyes sharpened with the intensity of someone recognizing a critical piece of information. "Ms. Harper, that's a very serious allegation," Cooper said quietly. "Do you feel you're in immediate danger?" They mentioned hiring the same external contractor who killed David Hartford and Marcus Jenkins. "They're planning to make my death look like an accident within the next few days." Agent Stone made a note on her tablet. "We'll need to see this recording and any supporting evidence you have. I have multiple copies stored in different locations. But if I'm right about this conspiracy, some people in this office are going to realize that your arrival isn't coincidental." Emma's analytical training kicked in. They'll accelerate their timeline. Agent Cooper stood, his movement decisive. "Stone, call for backup and start the evidence collection protocol. Ms. Harper, we're going to need you to help us identify everyone involved while keeping you safe." Through the conference room's glass walls, Emma could see increased activity. In the office, Blackwood was in urgent conversation with Ashley Williams and David Chen, their body language screaming emergency consultation. Jake Morrison caught her eye from his cubicle, his slight nod indicating he was ready to provide technical support. "There's something else," Emma said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I think they have someone in IT helping them manage digital evidence, but Jake Morrison might be an ally. He discovered the server backup of my recording and offered to help." Agent Cooper's expression grew grim. "Ms. Harper, if you're right about this conspiracy, the next few hours are going to be extremely dangerous. These people have already killed twice to protect $50 million. They won't hesitate to kill again." As if summoned by his words, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Emergency meeting in Blackwood's office. He wants to see you immediately about the FBI situation." The trap was closing, and Emma Harper found herself caught between federal agents who might be her salvation and colleagues who had already decided she needed to die. The trap was closing, and Emma Harper found herself caught between federal agents who might be her salvation and colleagues who had already decided she needed to die. She stared at Ashley's text message, her hands trembling slightly as the implications crystallized. "They want to see me immediately," she whispered to Agent Cooper, showing him the message. "This isn't routine. They know something's wrong." Agent Cooper's jaw tightened as he read the text. "You're not going to that meeting. Stone, we need to move to protective protocols now." But Agent Stone was already on her phone, speaking in rapid, clipped sentences about backup units and evidence preservation. Through the conference room's glass walls, Emma could see the office dynamic shifting like pieces on a chessboard. Blackwood stood in his office doorway, his usual paternal demeanor replaced by something cold and calculating as he scanned the workspace for Emma's location. "There's another way," Emma said, her analytical mind working through the possibilities. Let me meet with them, but under controlled circumstances. If you're monitoring the conversation, you might get them to reveal more about the conspiracy. Absolutely not. Cooper's response was immediate. These people have already killed 2 of your colleagues. We're not using you as bait. But if I don't show up, they'll know I've talked to you. The meeting request could be their way of gauging whether I suspect anything, or it could be them moving to eliminate me immediately. Emma's voice gained strength as she worked through the logic. Either way, hiding in this conference room doesn't solve the problem. Agent Stone ended her call and rejoined them. Backup is 20 minutes out, but we've got a problem. Building security just reported that someone requested the conference room schedules and employee location data. They know exactly where we are. The words had barely left her mouth when Emma saw Ashley Williams approaching the conference room, flanked by David Chen and another man she didn't recognize. Tall, lean, with the kind of casual confidence that somehow felt more dangerous than any obvious threat. "That's not a Blackstone employee," Emma said, nodding toward the unknown man. "I've never seen him before." Agent Cooper followed her gaze and his expression darkened. "Derek Collins. We've been tracking him for months. Corporate assassination specialist. If he's here, they've moved from planning to execution." The situation crystallized with terrifying clarity. Collins' presence meant they'd decided to eliminate her today, FBI agents or no FBI agents. Emma watched through the glass as Ashley knocked on the conference room door, her smile perfectly composed despite the fear Emma could now read in her eyes. "Ms. Harper, Robert would like to see you in his office. The agents are welcome to continue their investigation, but this is an internal personnel matter." Agent Cooper opened the door but remained between Ashley and Emma. "I'm afraid Ms. Harper is assisting with our investigation. Any internal matters will have to wait." "Of course." Ashley's tone remained professionally pleasant. "Though I should mention that Emma's been under considerable stress lately. Her work performance has been inconsistent. We're concerned about her mental state." The accusation hit like a physical blow. They were already building the narrative for her death. Unstable, employee, cracking under pressure, tragic accident or suicide. Emma felt Agent Cooper's subtle shift, positioning himself more protectively. "We'll keep that in mind," Cooper said evenly. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have questions to finish." As Ashley and the others withdrew, Emma caught Derek Collins, studying the conference room layout with professional interest. His gaze lingered on the windows, the door access points, the sight lines from the main office. He was planning something, and it wouldn't wait for backup to arrive. "He's going to try something," Emma whispered. "We need to move." Agent Stone was already packing her equipment. "Service elevator to the parking garage. We'll meet backup there and get you somewhere safe." They slipped out of the conference room during a moment when Collins was speaking with Blackwood, but Emma noticed Jake Morrison watching their movement. His subtle nod toward the service elevator corridor confirmed her hope that he was genuinely trying to help. The service elevator descended slowly, each floor feeling like an eternity. Agent Cooper maintained radio contact with his backup units while Agent Stone worked on her tablet, probably securing the evidence Emma had provided. But as they reached the parking garage level, Emma's sense of dread intensified. "This feels wrong," she said. "If Collins is as professional as you think, he'd have contingency plans. We're predictable right now." Agent Cooper's radio crackled. "Cooper, this is Baker Unit. We're in position at the main garage entrance. No sign of suspects." But as the elevator doors opened onto the dim parking garage, Emma saw movement in her peripheral vision. A figure in maintenance coveralls adjusting something near the concrete support beam directly above where they would walk to reach the FBI vehicles. "Construction work," she breathed, remembering the conversation she'd overheard. "They said the Hartford precedent worked beautifully. Structural failure." Agent Cooper followed her gaze and swore quietly. The figure in coveralls was Derek Collins, and the adjustment he was making involved what looked like cutting equipment near a support beam that had been strategically weakened. "Back in the elevator," Cooper commanded, but Collins had seen them. His casual demeanor evaporated as he abandoned subtlety for direct action. The beam gave way with a grinding shriek of stressed concrete and rebar. Emma's paranoia-sharpened reflexes, combined with her 3-year habit of avoiding the parking garage's blind spots after too many late nights, saved her life. She threw herself sideways, pulling Agent Stone with her as several tons of concrete crashed exactly where they would have been walking. The sound was deafening, echoing through the garage like an explosion. Car alarms triggered throughout the space, their wailing creating a chaos of noise that masked Collins's footsteps as he moved to a new position. "Federal agents!" Cooper shouted, his weapon drawn as he tried to locate Collins in the maze of concrete pillars and parked cars. "Derek Collins, you're under arrest!" Emma crouched behind a sedan, her heart hammering as she realized that her accidental recording had transformed from evidence into a death warrant. Collins had just attempted to murder 2 FBI agents along with her, which meant the conspiracy was willing to escalate to attacking federal law enforcement. Agent Stone was speaking rapidly into her radio. "Shots fired, federal agents under attack, parking garage of 200 West Madison. Suspect is Derek Collins, armed and extremely dangerous. We need tactical response now." But Emma knew Collins wouldn't wait for tactical response. He was a professional who'd just seen his subtle approach fail, which meant he'd switched to more direct methods. Through the chaos of car alarms and shouting, she heard Agent Cooper coordinating with the backup units. But Collins had the advantage of knowing the building layout and having planned for multiple contingencies. "There," Agent Stone pointed toward a service door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." "He's heading for the building systems, probably has an escape route planned through the utility corridors." The failed assassination attempt had confirmed everything Emma had told them and transformed the investigation into an active manhunt. But as they pursued Collins through the building's service areas, Emma realized that the conspiracy had just crossed a line that would bring the full weight of federal law enforcement down on Blackstone and Associates. Derek Collins might be hunting her, but now he was also being hunted by people with resources and training that matched his own. The question was whether they could catch him before he found another opportunity to complete his assignment. As sirens wailed in the distance and tactical teams converged on the building, Emma Harper found herself at the center of a federal investigation that would either expose a multi-million-dollar conspiracy or end with her death in the next few hours. The cat-and-mouse game had begun, but Emma was no longer sure who was the predator and who was the prey. The cat-and-mouse game had begun, but Emma was no longer sure who was the predator and who was the prey. As sirens wailed in the distance and tactical teams converged on the building, Agent Cooper guided Emma through the building's service corridors toward a secure location the FBI had established in the adjacent office tower. "Safe house is temporary," Cooper explained as they moved through the sky bridge connecting the buildings. "We need to build an airtight case before Collins regroups, or they destroy evidence." The FBI's temporary command center occupied the 20th floor of the neighboring building, giving them a clear view of Blackstone and Associates while maintaining tactical distance. Agent Stone immediately began setting up digital forensics equipment, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she prepared to dissect the conspiracy's electronic footprint. "Emma, I need you to walk me through every piece of evidence you've gathered," Stone said, connecting Emma's external drive to an isolated analysis system. "But first, we need to understand their digital capabilities. You mentioned Jake Morrison might be an ally?" Emma nodded, watching through the windows as tactical teams secured the Blackstone building. "He discovered unusual server activity and offered to help. If he's legitimate, he could provide inside access to their systems." Agent Cooper activated a secure communication device. "We're going to contact Morrison, but carefully. If he's compromised, we'll know immediately. The call connected after several rings. Jake's voice carried tension but relief when he heard Cooper identify himself. Agent Cooper? Thank God. They've locked down the entire building and started emergency data destruction protocols. I'm trying to preserve what I can, but they're wiping servers systematically. How much time do we have? Stone asked, already pulling up network monitoring tools. Maybe an hour before they finish with the financial records, but I've been copying critical files to a secure partition they don't know about. Jake's military training showed in his efficient report. Problem is, they've brought in external contractors to handle the deletion. Professional data destruction team. Emma felt her stomach drop. The same kind of professionals they use for murder? Probably. These aren't regular IT contractors. They know exactly which systems to target and how to make deletion look like routine maintenance. Jake paused, and Emma could hear urgent conversations in the background. They're asking for me specifically. I think they want to make sure I can't testify about what I've seen. Agent Stone's fingers flew across her keyboard as she established a secure connection to the Blackstone servers. Jake, I'm Agent Stone, FBI Cybercrimes. Can you give me remote access to your secure partition? Already prepared. Sending you encrypted access credentials now. Jake's voice carried grim determination. But you should know. I found communications between Blackwood and the external contractor, the one they hired to kill Emma. His name is Derek Collins, and according to the contracts, he's eliminated 2 previous targets. The confirmation sent a chill through Emma, even though she'd already known the truth. Seeing the murder contracts reduced to digital transactions somehow made the conspiracy feel even more coldly calculating. We have Collins under surveillance, Cooper said. Right now, our priority is preserving evidence before they destroy it. Agent Stone's screens filled with data as Jake's secure partition opened to her access. Jesus. Emma, look at this. Financial records scrolled past, showing the full scope of the embezzlement scheme. It's not 50 million, it's closer to 80 million over 5 years. Emma leaned over Stone's shoulder, her audit expertise immediately recognizing the sophisticated money laundering structure. Look at these shell company networks. They've been systematically draining client retirement funds and replacing them with worthless derivative instruments. When those clients retire, they'll discover their life savings have evaporated, Cooper finished grimly. How many victims are we talking about? Hundreds, Emma said, her voice tight with anger. Maybe thousands. These are teachers' pension funds, small business retirement accounts, working families who trusted Blackstone with their futures. Agent Stone continued her digital excavation, uncovering layers of the conspiracy that even Emma hadn't suspected. They've got contracts with multiple assassination specialists, not just Collins. This has been their standard operating procedure for anyone who got too close to the truth. A new window opened on Stone's screen, showing real-time network activity from the Blackstone building. They're accelerating the data destruction. Jake, can you slow them down? Jake's voice carried increasing urgency. I'm trying, but they've locked me out of the main systems. I can preserve what's already copied, but I can't stop them from destroying the originals. Emma watched the destruction happening in real time, years of evidence vanishing as corporate servers were systematically wiped. But her analytical mind was working on a different problem. Wait, if they're destroying everything, how are they planning to continue business operations? They must have backup systems they're not destroying. Smart thinking, Stone said, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. Let me trace their network architecture. There. A new diagram appeared, showing hidden server connections. They've got a shadow network, systems that mirror their legitimate business but store the real financial data. Can you access it? Not remotely, but... Stone looked at Cooper. If Jake could physically access their server room... Too dangerous, Cooper said immediately. Collins is still in that building, and they've already tried to kill. 3 federal agents. But Emma was studying the network diagram, her mind racing through possibilities. What if we didn't need physical access? Jake, are you still connected to their internal network? Yes, but they're monitoring everything now. What about the building's other systems? HVAC, security, fire suppression? Emma's audit work had taught her that modern buildings were essentially computer networks with walls around them. If we could trigger an emergency evacuation? Agent Stone's eyes lit up with understanding. Fire suppression systems often have network connections for monitoring. If we could access those and trigger a controlled evacuation, the external contractors would have to leave the building, giving us access to the shadow servers, Cooper finished. It's risky, but it might work. Jake's voice carried newfound determination. I can do it. Fire suppression system has administrative access from my workstation, but once I trigger it, they'll know someone's working against them from inside. Do it, Emma said before Cooper could object. Those financial records represent thousands of people's retirement savings. We can't let them destroy everything. Stone's screens filled with new activity as Jake initiated the fire suppression protocol. Across the sky bridge, they could see flashing lights beginning to activate in the Blackstone building as emergency systems responded to the triggered alert. Building evacuation in progress, Jake reported. External contractors are being escorted out by security. I've got maybe 20 minutes before they realize it's a false alarm. 20 minutes to crack their shadow network and download $80 million worth of evidence, Stone muttered, her hands flying across multiple keyboards simultaneously. No pressure. Emma watched the digital warfare unfold, realizing that her accidental Zoom recording had triggered something far larger than a simple murder conspiracy. They were fighting for the financial security of thousands of victims, using the same technology that had initially threatened to expose her. But as Agent Stone raced to download evidence and Jake worked to maintain their inside access, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Derek Collins was planning something none of them had anticipated. Professional killers didn't just give up after one failed attempt. The next 20 minutes would determine whether justice prevailed or whether the conspiracy would eliminate all the evidence and witnesses that threatened their criminal empire. The digital battlefield had been joined, and Emma Harper found herself at the center of a cyber war that would either expose corporate evil or destroy everyone trying to fight it. The digital battlefield had been joined, and Emma Harper found herself at the center of a cyber war that would either expose corporate evil or destroy everyone trying to fight it. Agent Stone's fingers flew across her keyboards as data streamed from Blackstone's shadow servers, each file potentially containing evidence of financial crimes that had destroyed countless lives. Got it, Stone announced, triumph evident in her voice. Complete financial records, offshore account details, shell company structures, everything we need to unravel their entire operation. But as Emma watched the download progress, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from Ashley Williams. The timing felt wrong. Why would Ashley be calling during a building evacuation? Don't answer it, Agent Cooper warned, but Emma was already staring at the caller ID, her analytical mind working through implications. She's been my closest friend here for 3 years, Emma said quietly. If she's really part of this conspiracy, I need to understand how deep it goes. Before Cooper could stop her, Emma answered the call, activating speaker mode so the agents could monitor. Emma, thank God you're okay. Ashley's voice carried what sounded like genuine relief. When the fire alarms went off and you weren't in the building, I was terrified something had happened to you. Where are you? The concern seemed authentic, but Emma now questioned everything she thought she knew about the people around her. I'm safe. Ashley, I need to ask you something directly. Are you working with Blackwood? The silence stretched for several heartbeats before Ashley's voice returned, smaller and filled with something that might have been tears. Emma, we need to talk, face to face. There are things I should have told you months ago. Agent Cooper was shaking his head firmly, but Emma felt compelled to understand the betrayal that had shaped her near-death experience. "The FBI is with me, Ashley. Whatever you need to say, you can say it now." "The FBI?" Ashley's voice cracked. "Oh God, Emma, you don't understand. They made me. I never wanted to hurt you." Agent Stone looked up from her computers, her expression grim. "Emma, look at this." Financial records filled her screen, showing a series of payments to Ashley Williams over the past 18 months. She's been receiving money from the shell companies, substantial amounts. The evidence hit Emma like a physical blow. Ashley, who had celebrated Emma's promotion, who had listened to her complaints about work stress, who had brought her coffee that very morning, had been selling information about Emma's audit progress to the people planning her murder. "How long?" Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt. "How long have you been reporting on me?" Ashley's breath caught in what sounded like a sob. "Since you started working on the Meridian accounts." "But Emma, you have to believe me. I never knew they were planning to hurt you. I thought they just wanted to know what you were discovering so they could, I don't know, fix problems before they became public." "You knew about the embezzlement," Emma said, pieces clicking into place. "You knew they were stealing retirement funds from teachers and working families." "I was drowning, Emma, after my divorce, with Tommy's medical bills. I was 3 months behind on rent, about to lose everything. When Blackwood offered me extra income for just keeping him informed about audit progress, it seemed like a lifeline." Agent Cooper took the phone. "Ms. Williams, this is Agent Cooper, FBI. We need you to come in immediately. Your cooperation could be crucial to stopping these people." "I want to help, but I'm scared. They have my son, Agent Cooper. When the building evacuation started, someone took Tommy from his after-school program. They said he'll be returned, safely if I make sure Emma doesn't testify." The revelation sent ice through Emma's veins. The conspiracy had escalated to kidnapping, using Ashley's child as leverage to ensure silence. Through the window, she could see tactical teams still securing the Blackstone building, but Collins had vanished into Chicago's urban maze. "Agent?" Stone's computer chimed with an urgent alert. "We've got a problem. Someone's accessing the shadow servers from a remote location. They're deleting files faster than I can copy them." "Jake?" Cooper called into his radio. Jake's voice crackled back with tension. "Not from inside the building. This is external access, probably from Collins or another professional. They're systematically destroying evidence." Emma watched years of financial crimes evaporating in real time. But her mind was also processing Ashley's situation, a single mother blackmailed into cooperation, now being used as a pawn to silence the only witness who could expose the conspiracy. "Ashley, where are you now?" Emma asked. "They have me. In a car outside the building. They're saying if you don't surrender to them voluntarily, Tommy." Ashley's voice broke completely. Agent Cooper's expression was grim as he coordinated with tactical teams through his radio. "We're tracking your location, Ms. Williams. Do not do anything to endanger yourself or your son." But Emma was staring at Agent Stone's screen, watching the systematic destruction of evidence. The conspiracy was covering its tracks while using Ashley's son as insurance against Emma's testimony. Even if they rescued Ashley and Tommy, without the financial evidence, proving the murders and embezzlement would be nearly impossible. "There's something else," Ashley whispered through the phone. "Emma, they didn't just target you because of Guy. Your audit work. Blackwood said you were too much like your father, too stubborn to be bought or scared off. He knew about what happened to your dad's business." The revelation hit Emma like lightning. Her father's accounting firm hadn't been destroyed by random corporate fraud. It had been deliberately targeted, probably by the same network that was now trying to kill her. The pattern of eliminating whistleblowers and ethical professionals went back years, possibly decades. "My father." Emma's voice trailed off as she processed the implications. Agent Stone looked up from her frantically working keyboards. Emma, I found something in the deleted files. Before they wiped everything, I caught references to other targets. Your father's name is in their records. The conspiracy wasn't just about protecting $50 or $80 million. It was about maintaining a system that had been destroying ethical professionals for years, eliminating anyone who posed a threat to their criminal network. Emma's father had been an early victim, and now they were trying to complete the family destruction by killing her. Ashley, listen to me, Emma said, her voice gaining strength as anger replaced fear. They killed my father. They destroyed his business and drove him to an early grave, and now they're trying to do the same to me. But we can stop them. Emma, no, Cooper warned, but she was already formulating a plan. Ashley, tell them I'll surrender, but only in exchange for your son's safety. Arrange a meeting at Navy Pier, public location, lots of witnesses. That's suicide, Agent Stone said bluntly. No, Emma replied, her analytical mind working through the tactical situation. It's the only way to draw them out while giving you time to recover the evidence. Jake, how much of the shadow server data did we lose? Jake's voice carried grim determination. Maybe 60%. But Emma, I found their backup systems. If we can get physical access to their off-site storage facility. Where? Warehouse. District, near the river. Same building where they store the physical documents that correspond to the digital records. Agent Cooper was already coordinating with tactical teams, but Emma knew they were running out of time. The conspiracy had taken a child hostage and was destroying evidence systematically. Direct confrontation might be the only way to save Ashley's son and preserve enough evidence to expose the truth. Ashley, set up the meeting, Emma said. But this time, we're going to be ready for them. As Chicago's afternoon light began to fade, Emma Harper prepared to walk into what might be her final confrontation with the people who had killed her father and were now threatening everyone she cared about. The betrayal had been revealed, but the war for justice was just beginning. As Chicago's afternoon light began to fade, Emma Harper prepared to walk into what might be her final confrontation with the people who had killed her father and were now threatening everyone she cared about. The betrayal had been revealed, but the war for justice was just beginning. The FBI command center had transformed into a tactical operations hub, with Agent Cooper coordinating multiple teams, while Agent Stone worked frantically to recover what remained of the digital evidence. Through the windows, Emma could see the Blackstone building's lights beginning to flicker on as normal business operations resumed after the false fire alarm. Emma, I need you to understand something, Cooper said, his voice carrying the weight of 15 years investigating corporate retaliation. These people have escalated beyond financial crimes. They're holding a child hostage and have hired professional killers. This isn't about money anymore. It's about survival, theirs and ours. Emma nodded, her mind processing the tactical situation with the same methodical approach she used for complex audits. They're desperate, which makes them dangerous but also predictable. Ashley's son gives them leverage, but it also exposes them to kidnapping charges that carry federal sentences. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Navy Pier, North Dock, 7 p.m. Come alone or Tommy dies. They want the recording and all copies. Agent Stone looked up from her computers. Emma, even if we give them everything, they can't let you live. You've seen too much, know too much. This is an elimination, not a negotiation. I know. Emma's voice carried a calm that surprised her. But we're not actually negotiating. We're setting a trap. Cooper activated his tactical radio. All units, this is Control. Target location is Navy Pier, North Dock. We need sniper coverage on all approaches and Marine units in the water. Suspect Derek Collins is extremely dangerous and has proven willing to attack federal agents. While Cooper coordinated the tactical response, Emma studied the digital evidence Agent Stone had managed to preserve. The financial records painted a picture of systemic corruption that went far beyond Blackstone Associates. Shell companies, offshore accounts, and murder contracts formed a network that had been operating for over a decade. "Look at this," Stone said, highlighting a series of transactions. "They've eliminated at least 12 potential whistleblowers over the past 8 years. Your father was one of the first." The confirmation of her father's murder sent cold fury through Emma's system. Thomas Harper had been a good man who'd tried to expose corporate fraud, and they'd destroyed him for it. His daughter wouldn't make the same mistake of fighting alone. Jake's voice crackled through the radio. "I've located their backup facility. Warehouse on North Branch near the river. Sending coordinates now. But Emma, there's something else. I found communications between Blackwood and someone called the director. This conspiracy goes higher than just Blackstone." "How much higher?" Cooper asked. "Federal level, maybe." "References to regulatory protection and judicial cooperation. This isn't just corporate crime. It's institutional corruption." Emma felt the scope of the conspiracy expanding like ripples in dark water. Her accidental recording had uncovered something vast and deadly, a system designed to protect financial criminals by eliminating anyone who threatened to expose them. "We need to move on multiple fronts," she said, her strategic thinking crystallizing. "The Navy Pier meeting draws their primary assets into the open, but we also need to secure the backup facility before they destroy the physical evidence." Agent Stone's computers chimed with an urgent alert. "They're accelerating the evidence destruction. Warehouse facility just started a controlled burn. They're literally burning documents." "How long before everything's destroyed?" "Maybe an hour, less if they use accelerants." Cooper made a command decision. "Stone, take a tactical team to the warehouse. Preserve what evidence you can. I'll handle the Navy Pier operation with Emma." "I'm coming too." Jake's voice carried military determination. "I know their digital systems better than anyone. If there are servers at that warehouse, I can preserve the data." As teams mobilized for simultaneous operations, Emma received another call from Ashley. Her friend's voice carried barely controlled terror. "Emma, they have Tommy in a van near the pier. I can see him, but there are 3 men with guns. Please, just give them what they want." "Ashley, I need you to listen carefully. In about an hour, FBI tactical teams are going to surround that area. When you see the red laser dots, get down. Immediately and stay down. Don't try to run to Tommy. Let the professionals handle the rescue." "What if something goes wrong? What if they hurt him?" Emma's voice carried a conviction that surprised her. "Ashley, these people killed my father and 2 of our colleagues. They've stolen millions from families who trusted them with their retirement savings. We're going to stop them, and we're going to save Tommy." As the sun set over Chicago, casting long shadows across the lake, Emma prepared for the confrontation that would either end the conspiracy or cost her life. She wore a wire transmitter and carried a tracking device, but her real protection would come from the tactical teams positioned around Navy Pier. Agent Cooper checked his equipment one final time. "Emma, remember, you're not actually going to surrender. We just need them exposed long enough for snipers to acquire targets. The moment you see red laser dots, drop to the ground." "What about Ashley and Tommy?" "Marine units will handle the water approach. Tactical teams will neutralize threats on land. But Emma..." Cooper's expression was grim. "Derek Collins is a professional. He'll be expecting federal surveillance. This won't be a simple arrest." Through her earpiece, Emma could hear Agent Stone's team approaching the warehouse facility. Smoke was already visible against the evening sky as documents burned inside the building. The conspiracy was destroying evidence even as they prepared to eliminate the last witness who could expose them. "Navy Pier in sight," Cooper reported as their unmarked vehicle approached the tourist destination. Even in October, the pier maintained a steady flow of visitors, providing both cover and additional security challenges for the tactical teams. Emma's phone rang as they parked. Blackwood's voice, warm and paternal as always, carried an undertone of finality. "Emma, my dear, I hope you understand this isn't personal. You're simply too much like your father, too ethical for your own." "Good. You killed him," Emma said, no longer hiding her knowledge. "Thomas Harper died because he couldn't accept that some systems are larger than individual conscience. Tonight, you have the opportunity to save young Tommy Williams by making a different choice." Emma looked toward the north dock, where she could see figures moving in the growing darkness. Ashley's silhouette was visible near a van, with armed men positioned around the perimeter. In the distance, she could make out the subtle movements of FBI tactical teams taking position. "I'll be there in 5 minutes," Emma said. "But Blackwood, when this is over, everyone will know what you've done. The recording, the evidence, all of it will come out." Blackwood's laugh held no warmth. "My dear Emma, you still don't understand the scope of what you've stumbled into. We've been eliminating problems like you for years. Tonight simply closes the final chapter." As Emma walked toward what might be her death, she carried with her the weight of every victim the conspiracy had claimed. Her father, David Hartford, Marcus Jenkins, and countless families whose retirement savings had been stolen, they all deserved justice. The trap was closing, but Emma Harper was no longer just the prey. She was the bait in a federal operation designed to bring down a conspiracy that had murdered with impunity for too long. In the distance, she could see the red dots of laser sights beginning to appear in the darkness, and she knew that whatever happened in the next few minutes would determine whether justice finally prevailed or whether the conspiracy would claim its final victims. In the distance, she could see the red dots of laser sights beginning to appear in the darkness, and she knew that whatever happened in the next few minutes would determine whether justice finally prevailed or whether the conspiracy would claim its final victims. Emma walked along Navy Pier's wooden planks, her footsteps echoing in the crisp October evening air. Tourist crowds had thinned with the approaching darkness, leaving stretches of the pier eerily quiet except for the gentle lapping of Lake Michigan against the dock pilings. Through her earpiece, she could hear Agent Cooper's steady voice coordinating tactical positions. "Sniper 1 in position, north approach clear. Marine unit holding at 200 meters. Thermal imaging shows 4 subjects near the target vehicle." Emma's analytical mind cataloged every detail as she approached the north dock. Ashley stood near a black van, her posture rigid with terror. 2 men flanked her, one she recognized as David Chen from Legal, the other a stranger whose military bearing suggested professional training. Derek Collins was nowhere visible, which made him infinitely more dangerous. "Emma!" Ashley's voice carried across the water as she spotted her approach. "Please, just give them what they want." Emma raised her hands to show she was unarmed, though the wire transmitter and tracking device felt like armor against her skin. "I'm here. Where's Tommy?" David Chen stepped forward, his nervous energy replaced by cold professionalism. "Ms. Harper, you've caused considerable trouble for a simple audit discrepancy. Hand over all copies of the recording and any related evidence." "Where's the boy?" Emma demanded, stopping 30 feet from the van. Chen nodded to his companion, who opened the van's rear door. 8-year-old Tommy Williams sat inside, duct tape over his mouth, but his eyes alert and frightened. The sight of the terrified child sent fury through Emma's system. These people had crossed every line in their desperation to protect their criminal empire. "As you can see, young Tommy is unharmed," Chen said. "He'll remain that way if you cooperate fully." Emma reached into her jacket slowly, producing her phone and external drive. "Everything's here, the recording, the financial evidence, all of it. But I want Tommy released first." "I'm afraid that's not how this works," a new voice said from behind her. Emma turned to see Derek Collins emerging from behind a shipping container, his movement fluid and predatory. He carried himself with the casual confidence of someone who had never failed to complete an assignment, and his presence transformed the situation from a negotiation into an execution. "Mr. Collins," Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I heard you specialize in making murders look like accidents." Collins tilted his head with what might have been respect. "You're remarkably calm for someone facing death, Ms. Harper. I can see why you've been such a persistent problem." Through her earpiece, Emma heard Agent Cooper's urgent whisper. "Collins is exposed, but he's too close to civilians. We need separation." Emma took a step backward, trying to create distance between Collins and Ashley. "You know, I've been thinking about your previous work. David Hartford, Marcus Jenkins, very creative accident scenarios." "Professional pride," Collins replied, matching her backward movement. Each elimination was tailored to the target's lifestyle and psychology. Hartford the engineer appreciated structural integrity, until it failed him. Jenkins the careful driver trusted his brakes implicitly. "And what accident did you plan? For me?" Collins smiled, and Emma saw the predator beneath the professional facade. "Actually, your death won't be an accident. Tonight, distraught financial analyst Emma Harper, facing exposure of her own embezzlement scheme, will murder her colleague Ashley Williams and her child before taking her own life. Very tragic, very believable." The plan's cold efficiency was breathtaking. They intended to frame her for the crimes she'd discovered, making her the scapegoat while destroying all witnesses. But Collins had made a tactical error. He'd moved too far from the van, creating the separation Agent Cooper needed. Red laser dots suddenly appeared on Collins's chest as FBI snipers acquired their target. But Collins was a professional who'd survived by anticipating betrayal. He dove toward Ashley, using her as a human shield while drawing his weapon. "Federal agents!" Cooper's voice boomed across the pier. "Drop your weapons!" Chaos erupted as the carefully planned arrest became a firefight. Chen pulled a pistol and fired wildly toward the sniper positions, while Collins dragged Ashley toward the van where Tommy remained trapped. Emma threw herself behind a concrete barrier as bullets sparked off metal and wood around her. "Marine unit, move in," Cooper commanded. "Protect the civilians." Emma could see the tactical situation deteriorating. Collins was too experienced to be trapped easily, and he'd positioned himself where any sniper shot risked hitting Ashley. The van containing Tommy was armored, preventing easy rescue access. But Emma's 3 years of audit work had taught her to find weaknesses in seemingly secure systems. The van's engine was running, exhaust visible in the cold air. Collins needed mobility to escape, which meant he couldn't abandon the vehicle. "Agent Cooper," she whispered into her transmitter. "The van's fuel line. If your snipers can disable." "Too risky with civilians inside." Emma made a decision that went against every survival instinct. She broke from cover, sprinting not away from the gunfire but toward it. Collins saw her movement and shifted his aim, but Emma had anticipated his professional training. She zigzagged unpredictably, using her knowledge of the pier's layout to stay behind cover. "What are you doing?" Collins shouted, genuinely surprised by her tactical aggression. "Something you didn't plan for," Emma replied, reaching the van's rear. Tommy's eyes widened as she appeared at the back door, but Emma motioned for him to stay quiet. Collins was trapped in a tactical nightmare. He couldn't shoot Emma without exposing himself to sniper fire, but he couldn't maintain his human shield while she threatened his escape vehicle. His professional composure cracked for the first time. "Ms. Harper, you're forcing me to kill everyone here." "No," Emma said, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who had nothing left to lose. "I'm forcing you to face justice for my father, for Hartford, for Jenkins, and for every family whose savings you helped steal." Agent Stone's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Warehouse secured. We have the physical evidence, Blackwood and 3 others in custody." The confirmation that evidence had been preserved changed the tactical equation. Even if Collins escaped, the conspiracy was exposed. Emma saw understanding dawn in his eyes. His assignment had become impossible to complete successfully. "Collins, you're surrounded," Cooper called out. "Release the hostages and surrender." For a moment, Emma thought the professional killer might actually submit to arrest. But Collins had never failed an assignment, and his pride wouldn't allow surrender. He raised his weapon toward Tommy, choosing to eliminate witnesses rather than accept defeat. Emma's response was pure instinct and 3 years of suppressed rage. She launched herself at Collins, not with any expectation of victory, but with the simple determination that no more innocents would die for corporate greed. The impact sent them both tumbling across the pier's wooden planks. Collins was stronger and better trained, but Emma fought with the fury of someone who had lost everything to the conspiracy he represented. They struggled for control of his weapon as FBI tactical teams closed in. The gun fired once, the bullet sparking off concrete. Then Collins's professional training reasserted itself, and Emma found herself staring down the barrel of his pistol, knowing she had seconds to live. The sniper's bullet took Collins in the head, ending his threat permanently. Emma collapsed onto the pier, her body shaking with adrenaline as tactical teams secured the area. Ashley ran to embrace her freed son while EMTs checked everyone for injuries. "Is it over?" Emma asked Agent Cooper as he helped her to her feet. "The immediate threat is neutralized," Cooper replied. "But Emma, what you uncovered goes deeper than Blackstone and Associates. This is going to be a federal investigation that lasts years." Emma looked out over Lake Michigan, its dark waters reflecting the lights of Chicago's skyline. Somewhere in that city, her father's grave held a man who had died trying to expose corporate corruption. Tonight, his daughter had survived to continue that fight. Derek Collins lay motionless on the pier, his perfect record finally broken by someone he'd underestimated. The conspiracy that had seemed untouchable 12 hours ago was now exposed, its leaders in custody and its crimes documented for federal prosecution. Justice had been served, but Emma Harper knew the real work was just beginning. Justice had been served, but Emma Harper knew the real work was just beginning. As she stood on the pier watching Derek Collins's body being covered with a sheet, she felt no satisfaction, only a hollow exhaustion and the weight of responsibility that comes with surviving when others hadn't. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago buzzed with media attention as the trial of United States v. Blackwood et al. Entered its final phase. Emma adjusted her navy blazer and checked her notes one last time before stepping into the witness box that had become as familiar as her old cubicle at Blackstone Associates. "Ms. Harper, you've testified extensively about the events of October 15th, prosecuting attorney Sarah Mitchell began. "But I want to focus today on the human cost of this conspiracy. Can you tell the jury about the victims whose retirement funds were stolen?" Emma looked toward the gallery, where dozens of faces watched her with hope and expectation. These were the teachers, small business owners, and working families whose life savings had been systematically drained by Blackwood's sophisticated embezzlement scheme. Margaret Chen, 67 years old, worked as a third-grade teacher for 42 years, Emma began, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath. She discovered last November that her pension fund, which should have contained $300,000, held less than $50,000 in worthless derivative instruments. She's now working part-time at a grocery store to afford her medications. The courtroom was silent except for the soft scratch of the court reporter's keys. Emma continued, methodically presenting each victim's story with the same attention to detail she'd once applied to financial audits. Robert Fernandez, small business owner, lost his entire retirement account, $400,000, and had to sell his family restaurant to avoid bankruptcy. Maria Santos, single mother of 3, discovered her 401k had been systematically drained over 5 years. The list goes on. Defense attorney James Wallace rose for cross-examination, his expensive suit and silver hair radiating the kind of corporate authority that had once intimidated Emma. Not anymore. "Ms. Harper, isn't it true that you were facing financial difficulties? Yourself? Student loans, credit card debt, mounting pressure that might have motivated you to fabricate evidence?" Emma met his gaze without flinching. "Mr. Wallace, 6 months ago I would have been intimidated by that question. But I've learned something about pressure. Real pressure isn't owing money. It's watching a child held at gunpoint because corporate criminals want to protect their stolen wealth." The defense attorney's confident expression flickered. Emma continued, her voice gaining strength. "Yes, I had student debt. $43,000 to be exact. But I didn't steal $80 million from hardworking families to pay it off. Your client did." In the defendant's section, Robert Blackwood sat with the same composed expression he'd worn in countless corporate meetings. But Emma could see the defeat in his eyes. The evidence was overwhelming: digital records, financial transfers, recorded conversations, and testimony from Ashley Williams, who had received immunity in exchange for cooperation. "The prosecution rests," Sarah Mitchell announced after Emma's testimony concluded. The trial had taken 4 months, but the verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts: embezzlement, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and racketeering. Blackwood received life without parole. David Chen and the other conspirators faced sentences ranging from 25 to 40 years. 1 year later, Emma stood in the conference room of Blackstone Associates, now operating under federal oversight as Meridian Financial Services, looking out at the Chicago skyline that had witnessed her transformation from naive analyst to corporate whistleblower to ethics enforcement director. The company had been restructured from the ground up. All stolen funds had been recovered and returned to victims. New management, transparency protocols, and independent oversight ensured that the crimes of the past couldn't be repeated. "Emma?" Jake Morrison appeared in the doorway, no longer the quiet IT manager, but now Chief Technology Officer responsible for implementing digital safeguards that would prevent future financial crimes. Their relationship had evolved from allies of necessity to something deeper. 2 people who had found love in the aftermath of shared trauma. "Ready for the memorial service?" he asked gently. Emma nodded, picking up the speech she'd prepared. Today marked the 2nd anniversary of her father's death, and she was finally ready to tell his story publicly. The Thomas Harper Memorial Foundation would provide legal support for financial whistleblowers, ensuring that future ethical professionals wouldn't face the conspiracy's threats alone. The memorial service was held in Millennium Park, where Chicago's autumn sun cast golden light through the trees. Hundreds of people attended: victims whose savings had been recovered, fellow professionals who worked in financial ethics, law enforcement officers who had participated in the investigation. Agent Ryan Cooper, now director of the FBI's Corporate Crime Task Force, introduced Emma to the crowd. Thomas Harper died fighting corporate corruption. His daughter survived to win that fight. The Harper Foundation ensures that future whistleblowers won't stand alone. Emma approached the microphone, looking out at faces that represented hope for systemic change. In the front row, Ashley Williams sat with her son Tommy, both of them testament to the possibility of redemption after betrayal. Ashley now worked for the foundation, using her experience to help other employees who found themselves pressured into corporate crimes. "My father taught me that numbers tell stories," Emma began. "But I've learned that the most important stories aren't about profit margins or quarterly returns. They're about courage, justice, and the ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things when they discover wrongdoing." She spoke about the investigation, the victims, and the importance of institutional change. But mostly, she spoke about hope, the hope that corporate crime could be prevented, that justice could prevail, and that ethical professionals could work without fear of retaliation. The conspiracy that killed my father believed that money and violence could silence anyone who threatened their criminal enterprise, Emma concluded. They were wrong. Truth has a way of surviving, even when its defenders don't. Today, we ensure that future defenders of truth won't face those dangers alone. As applause filled the park, Emma felt a sense of completion that had been missing since that terrible Zoom call 18 months ago. The accidental recording that had nearly cost her life had instead become the foundation for systematic change in corporate accountability. 3 years later, Emma sat in her office at the Harper Foundation, reviewing grant applications from whistleblowers seeking legal protection. The foundation had supported over 200 cases, preventing corporate retaliation and exposing financial crimes across multiple industries. Her desk held a photo from her wedding to Jake, a small ceremony attended by Agent Cooper, Agent Stone, and even Ashley Williams, who had become one of Emma's closest friends again through years of careful rebuilding of trust. Redemption was possible, but it required honest work and genuine change. The phone rang with a call from a nervous-sounding woman in Detroit who had discovered accounting irregularities at her company. "Ms. Harper, I found your foundation online. I think my employer is stealing pension funds, but I'm scared to report it. They have connections, money, power?" Emma leaned back in her chair, remembering her own terror when she'd first realized the scope of the conspiracy she'd uncovered. "What's your name?" "Sarah Mitchell." "Well, Sarah, you called the right place. We're going to make sure you're protected, and we're going to help you expose whatever crimes you've discovered. You're not alone in this fight." As Emma began gathering resources for another whistleblower, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a scared analyst to a leader in corporate accountability. The accidental Zoom recording had revealed not just one conspiracy, but a system that required constant vigilance to maintain ethical standards. Her father's ghost could finally rest. The fight he'd died for was now institutionalized, protected by law and funded by recovered criminal assets. Thomas Harper's legacy lived on in every whistleblower who found courage to speak truth to power, knowing they wouldn't face the conspiracy's violence alone. Outside her window, Chicago continued its endless rhythm of commerce and ambition. But now, Emma Harper stood as a guardian against those who would corrupt that system for personal gain. The accidental recording had saved more than her own life. It had saved the principle that justice could prevail over criminal conspiracy, no matter how sophisticated or violent. The work continued, one case at a time, one whistleblower at a time, one victory at a time. Justice had been served, and Emma Harper had found her life's purpose in ensuring it would be served again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.